Today, before we jump into the next component, right effort, the fifth component, I think it's good to have a checkpoint and do a review of what you have read so far, so that we don't all just read and then forget, and then we miss the purpose of studying in the first place. So I will gloss through what we have read so far. Let me share the screen. From the very beginning, I will quickly gloss through each chapter and each component, and then stop at some point to see whether some of you have any questions or comments. So we started with this book, The Noble Eightfold Path. Do you still recall why did we read this book in the first place? Yeah. So it was because I thought there are so many Buddhist teachings, there are so many Buddhist materials, but which one should we start to read first? Then I thought, what is the core teachings of Buddhism? And then I asked, and then Sai Kiang answered, oh, it's the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path. Yeah. So if we have a strong understanding in the core teachings of Buddhism, I feel like this would be a good start before we explore other teachings. So that is the reason I chose this material in the first place. And then we start to read for, I think, 1 month plus now, around 32 to 33 days. We start with the preface, with the abbreviations, all the way until chapter 4, right livelihood. So let's go through one by one. The introduction, the way to the end of suffering. For this chapter, the more important thing for me is these 3 criteria as standards for evaluation. Evaluation of what? Evaluation of a spiritual system. What and how should we choose one? It can be Buddhism, it can be Hinduism, it can be Christians, it can be Jainism, but how do we actually assess at the outset what spiritual system would be, so to speak, the best one? But this can be subjective and sensitive. But if we follow this criteria, the first criteria, the teaching gives full and accurate picture of the range of suffering. The second one, a correct analysis of the causes. And the third one, the path itself, the path to stop the causes of suffering. Why do we keep emphasizing on suffering in the first place? Because all problems in our life can be reduced to problem of suffering. We all try to solve, ultimately, any problems that we encounter is to solve the problem of suffering. Why do we say so? For example, we eat to solve the problem of suffering of hunger. We seek entertainment to solve the problem of suffering of boredom. Yeah? So you can try to track back to your daily lives and then take examples of what you do and what suffering were you trying to solve. Yeah. So in the end, you will find that everything reduced to solving a problem of suffering. Okay. I think there is one more part that is pretty interesting. Complete. Yes, this one is also important for me. So this is the one that I just explained. All problems ultimately can be reduced to the problem of suffering. Thus, what we need is a way that will end this problem finally and completely. Both of these are important. So what do we mean by complete end of suffering? to end of suffering in all its form, and to a final end, to bring suffering to an irreversible stop. So firstly, let's explore complete. Okay, to understand complete, then we should also understand what it means by incomplete, end of suffering. So if we use the example of headache, let's say I'm having 100% headache. To say I eradicated 50% of my headache, my pain, the painful of my headache, the pain reduced from 100% to 50%. So I would say it removes my suffering, but it's not complete. It only removes 50% of my suffering. My headache is still there, even though it has lessened. Yeah. So to make it complete, my headache has to be removed 100%. When all the pain reduced to zero, then we can say it is a complete end of the suffering of my headache. That's one. And then what do we mean by final end of suffering? If I have cured my headache down to 0%, and then tomorrow the headache springs up again, then we cannot say that it is a final end of suffering. It does not bring my headache to irreversible stop because it springs up again. So it is only when my headache goes down to zero, we can say it's complete. And then only when my headache would not spring up again in the future, then we can say, it's already a final end of suffering of my headache. So that is what is meant by complete and final. Or at least that is how I understand it. So headache is just one example, but you can apply this to all of your suffering. Yeah. So when I read this, I feel like this one is the most striking part for me and memorable one. So before I continue, any question or comments so far? I think Xing Hui has to leave soon. Okay, bye Xing Hui. Thanks for joining us. I'll see you again. Okay, that is the first chapter. For the three criteria, the range of suffering, this one is expanded further in this paragraph, but basically it explains the whole range of dukkha and it explains the word dukkha as well. For the second one, the causes of suffering, let's see. Here it traces to defilements, kilesas. The most basic defilements are greed, aversion, and delusion. There are other secondary defilements from the three roots: conceit, jealousy, ambition, lethargy, arrogance, and the rest. But there is one defilement which gives rise to all the others. This one, the root of all defilements is ignorance, avijja. That is the second one. The third one, cutting off the causes of suffering. So what is the path itself to eliminate and eradicate suffering completely and finally? And it is, of course, the path itself, the Noble Eightfold Path. Right view, right attention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So that is it for the introduction. A very quick, brief summary of the introduction. Any questions or comments so far? Okay, all good? Okay, if all good, then let's quickly explore the first factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, right view, samadhi. So right view is divided into two broad categories. One is the mundane right view, which involves the correct grasp of the law of karma, the moral efficacy of action. Here, we should understand the key term karma here means action. In Buddhism, it is a volitional action, the action that caused by your motive or your will. So it is your motive, underlying motive and will that gives the action ethical significance. So more than a simple knowledge of the general meaning of karma, we can also understand, firstly, the ethical distinction of karma into the unwholesome and the wholesome, the principal cases of each type, and the roots from which this action springs. So these three categories. Firstly, we can distinguish karma into the unwholesome and the wholesome. What is unwholesome karma? It's action that's blameworthy, detrimental to spiritual development, and conducive to suffering for oneself and others. What is the wholesome karma? It's the opposite of unwholesome karma. An action that is morally commendable, helpful to spiritual growth, and productive of benefits for oneself and others. There are many instances of unwholesome and wholesome karma, but we can select 10 as a primary. What are the 10? Destroying life, taking what is not given, wrong conduct in regards to sense pleasures, false speech, slanderous speech, harsh speech, idle chatter, covetousness, ill will, wrong view. And then finally, we trace back again to the roots, how these actions, this karma springs up. Where does it springs up from? We trace it back again to the roots, to the defilements. The unwholesome roots, we can trace back to the greed, aversion, and delusion. And the opposite of this is non-greed, non-aversion, and non-delusion. Why is it expressed this way? It was because in the old Indian fashion, it is how they express this kind of opposite. What is the opposite of greed? They put non inside. Non-greed is the opposite of greed. It's important to note that though these are negatively designated, they signify not merely the absence of defilements, but the corresponding virtues. Non-greed, it implies renunciation, detachment, generosity. Non-aversion implies loving kindness, sympathy, gentleness. Non-delusion implies wisdom. Any action originating from all these wholesome roots is called wholesome karma. That is for the first type, the mundane right view. Any question or comments so far? Mundane right view. Yeah, it can feel a little bit quick, but we don't have much time today. But I'm not going to cover all the components. Maybe we can continue tomorrow with the review. So the second type of right view would be the superior right view itself. What is the superior right view? The superior right view leading to liberation is the understanding of the Four Noble Truths. What is the Four Noble Truths? Any of you can remember?
Dukkha, cessation, origin of dukkha, cessation, and the path.
Okay, yeah. The first one is dukkha itself. Yeah, thanks, I can. The second one, Yeah, second one is the cause of dukkha, the origin, like Sakyong mentioned. The third one is the cessation itself. Yeah, this is from the sutta itself. This is the noble truth of the cessation of suffering, a complete fading away and cessation of this craving. It's forsaking and abandonment, liberation and detachment from. And the last one, is the noble eightfold path itself, the fourth noble truth. Yeah. In a way, you can also trace this parallel back to the three criteria that we mentioned. The first criteria, the range of suffering, which is the first noble truth. Let's see. And then cutting off the causes of suffering, which is the the analysis is the second noble truth. And the third, cutting off the causes of suffering, is the noble eightfold path. So what is missing here? There are three criteria, but there are four noble truths. So the missing one is the nibbana itself. So the third noble truth, Bhikkhu Bodhi does not include it in the criteria we mentioned earlier. Yeah, why is it so? Because let's go back to the purpose again to have this criteria is to evaluate a teaching or a spiritual system. The reason Nibbana is included because this is not correlates to the initial purpose of evaluating a spiritual system. So that is how I would understand it. That is for the superior right view, understanding of the Four Noble Truths. Any question or comments? Yeah, this review can be a little bit too fast, but it is good that maybe you can read this text again on your own, and then if you have any question, then we can bring it up in the discussion. So maybe let's quickly go through right intention as well. On a quick summary, right intention is divided into three. The intention of renunciation. Here we explore why desire is actually the cause of suffering. It's summarized perfectly in this line. Let's find it. Whether it be wealth, power, positions, or other persons, separation is inevitable, and the pain that accompanies separation is proportional to the force of attachment. Strong attachment brings much suffering. Little attachment brings little suffering. No attachment brings no suffering. So we can try to relate this in our daily experiences. For me, one of the most painful suffering in the recent years is when I had a breakup with my ex-girlfriend. Wow, because I was so attached to that relationship. When it happens on that day, I was like, oh wow, it pains me for many months to come. That's one thing. I think Saiken also mentioned separation with her car. Seems like Saiken also said when I think the 10 years of what is it called again? The certificate of COE or something?
COE.
Yeah.
Actually, my car has been with me for 15 years.
Oh.
After the initial 10 years, I did an extension of 5 years COE. Yeah. So it's a 15-year-old car.
Yeah. So
Actually, from my personal experience, what I did is I sort of like psycho myself. Before the separation, I reminded myself, how many days left, So I get used to it better, I would say. You prepare yourself. So I think what we are doing now is also preparing ourselves for death, how to have no fear, how to, that means correct our body, speech, and mind to follow the path so that, we can face reality better. We can accept things as they really are better. And the key thing that is mentioned here, I would say, is the craving. So like what you just mentioned, what gives rise to suffering is because of our ignorance of this craving. We just don't see it. We just fail to see that everything arises because of this craving. Yeah. That's right.
thanks for sharing, Saika. And perhaps just for today, if let's say we can do some kind of reflection, perhaps this would be a good one. Try to examine this sentence and then explore, examine your daily life, what kind of attachment you are still having, and examine how strong it is. And then you can also imagine when that thing suddenly disappears, how much would you suffer? So one example, let's say, my phone. If I were to suddenly lose my phone, well, I would be really frustrated and I would be really sad. There's a lot of things, especially the data inside. There's a lot of photos, a lot of chat messages, a lot of data, all the important data inside, contacts as well, my number. If this piece of thing, this very small thing, suddenly was someone to steal, or I would misplace it and I forget to bring it back home, I would probably suffer a lot. I would say, not probably, I think I would suffer a lot. That's one thing. Just one example, just some simple small stuff like this can make me suffer. But there is also many other stuff that can make me suffer, not just phone. But my point is, try to examine what are the things that you are attached to, and then examine how it can give you suffering. And then the next step, what do you want to do about it? Yeah. So you can try the exercise and then maybe we can share tomorrow. Also tomorrow I will continue with the review. So try to read beforehand, maybe just a quick read, and then see if there's anything you would like to bring up. Comments or questions are all welcome. So 8:02, apologies for going over time, 2 minutes over time. So let's do a dedication. 厌消三障诸烦恼，厌得就会真明了。普愿罪障悉消除，世世常行菩萨道。阿弥陀佛。Till we meet again, may we be guided by the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Have a superb Saturday ahead. One quick announcement. Tonight, there is no Bhikkhu Bodhi class. I think it's on break when I check the website. So it might resume next Saturday, but I will let you guys know again. So thanks everyone for waking up despite a very nice weather to sleep. And thanks for attending. I'll see you guys again.
Okay, everybody.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.